"Hey, darlings." Mishka coughed while lying in bed, and Olga, his mother, literally broke her heart. "Probably the temperature rose again. We need to go and put the baby in the thermometer." Quietly, trying not to make a noise, Olga sneaked into the corner of the room, where, with a homemade partition and an old wool blanket, her son, her boy, was lying on an old, pressed sofa. Having put the child's hand to the forehead, Olga shivered. "Yes, everything is like that. The temperature is not small." Misha almost burned. Olga went to the other part of the room, where on the flimsy polished table were bottles with medicines. There she found one with a heat-reducing syrup and, having made little effort, unscrewed the white plastic cover. The bottle was frighteningly light, and Olga suddenly realized with frightening clarity that literally tomorrow there would be nothing to beat the temperature of the sun. Just nothing. This discovery took away from the young woman the remnants of her strength, and she did not sit down. She collapsed, standing nearby, an old chair with wooden armrests and filled with bitter tears. Misha coughed. Not good, strong. With attacks and desperate attempts to drag air into the chest, he barely had such an opportunity. Olga listened to this uneven, intermittent and suffocating breath, accompanied by which her tears fell on her cheeks and could not stop. It seemed that life also left with salty moisture, because the heart suddenly began to beat. Olga cried and whined like a offended little girl, like a child who was shown and not given a candy, like a puppy who was lured by a piece of delicious sausage, but instead of feeding him with a treat with a good hand, they poked cold boots on the protruding ribs and locked him in a chulon. Olga no longer had the strength to fight, to portray, at least for the sake of children, that everything in her life is good. Neroso, Ihorosho, Sudiapovsimo, Uzinim. All her not so long life, just years old, Olga was a very optimistic. She easily found a way out of the most confusing and neglected situations. But besides that, she seemed to be able to find a way in. So it happened that she and her 2 children are now crossing the line of life in this nightmare hole, and does not even have money to buy a new medicine for Misha tomorrow. And how will she start it? The child on the couch again went into a cough attack. For a minute, Olga even felt that her son could not breathe, and she rushed to him, pressed him to her, put her hands on his back, asked and begged, not knowing who and why, for Misha to suffocate. And he suffocated. Olga put her son on the couch and looked at the clock, which measured the time with black arrows right above the child's head. It was the second half of the night. Before dawn, there was still plenty of time. I wish I could wait and sleep alone. Since Misha got sick, sleeping fully, even for 5 hours, was a task for a young mother with an asterisk. Sometimes so loud that the neighbors knocked on the wall, demanding to calm the child, as if he deliberately teased them with his cough instead of sleeping like normal people. And during the day, everything was different. But even during the day, the unfortunate young mother could not rest, because she had to take care of her younger daughter. Masha was 1.5 years old, an interesting and very restless age. Sometimes the girl literally didn't come off her hands, and sometimes it was impossible to catch her to put her in a wheelchair. Therefore, Olga had to sweat a lot in an attempt to adjust her indecency to some business. Children usually got sick one after another. Yesterday it seemed that everything was fine, and Olga even made plans that finally you can try to find yourself at least some kind of a job, as if suddenly everything changed in one part. And there was no way to earn money. One of the children had a high fever. He started to cough, and then he gave similar symptoms to another. And that's it. The life of the young mother again began to resemble that fairy tale where the further the worse. And no light even expected. Not only did all the money received as a favor go to the children's treatment, but also those small problems that Olga had time to deal with in relatively calm periods. However, in recent times, There have been fewer and fewer such periods, and there are more and more problems and troubles. But where can you get away from this? The young woman realized that she had chosen such a fate when she decided that she would not get rid of the second child. What is there to regret now? Olga was born to a poor family. You could even say a poor family. She never knew her father, and her mother never told her about this man. A couple of times in the minutes of the most acute mental pain, she threw something like, "Your father is an ugly traitor, a scoundrel and a cheater," to her daughter. But that's all over. The details of the girl were not then, not later. It was not possible to find out. They raised Olga's mother and grandmother in four hands. They lived in a barack in a working area on the outskirts of the city. It is surprising that such housing still remained in industrial cities, even in the 20th century. When Olga read stories of domestic and foreign writers at school and literature about how children lived in the past century, she caught herself saying that their life almost accurately copies its own, at least in the part of household issues. The barack was built from wood in the first post-war years. Blown through all the windows, it was heated by stoves, because the existing central heating there, by the grace of the Creator, broke in the of the 10th century. The water supply also did not come out of the struggle with time. The toilet, one of all the residents, was on the street in the form of a separate, standing, water-resistant building. The sink with cold water was placed there, with the only significant difference. There was no hidden room for him, and therefore he just stood alone under the canopy. Everyone who somehow ended up abandoned by fate in this collapse, and resettled them elsewhere, giving full-fledged apartments to the property. But alas, this happiness has not yet been foreseen. Because women continued to live like in the 10th century, children continued to suffer from the mold, which vaguely felt itself on the walls, and not the numerous men who still remained in the barracks, continued to drink as if not in themselves, according to the old tradition. Olga was growing up to accompany drunk fights and whispers about the need to call the district police. The hottest desire of the girl was to simply disappear in such moments, so as not to hear this cacophony anymore. One thing was good in this old and unreliable, already in all relations barracks. This is the area of the room that was taken away by each resident. Olga, grandmother, and mom were engaged in a pretty big, if not to say just a huge room with an area of square meters. That's why Olga had somewhere to hang out. She could even ride there on a flat scooter, which she inherited from other girls who grew up in this barack. Yes, she had her own corner. Grandma fenced the room with an old closet and arranged her granddaughter her own little room, with which the most genuine boudoir was created with joint efforts. There, between the wardrobe and the wall, they put an old bed with springs, which had long been pressed and hung almost to the floor. Grandma asked the neighbor of Aunt Sony, who worked as a storage woman in the local kindergarten, a couple of old, written-off cotton mattresses in exchange for some chicken cuts from the market, and made a fabulous feather out of them, like a real princess. As a child, Olga believed that it was on such a pillow that the famous Princess Nagaroshan slept. But no matter what, the grandmother's homemade helped the girl sleep relatively comfortably without bending along with the springs to the very floor. From her old dress, the old lady cut off a pretty good. He hung the fabric down with his long tongues, and only the brushes at the ends of this improvised object of royal life suspiciously resembled a tool that was sewn along the grandmother's day-off dress. In addition to the royal bed, the room was also decorated with a perfume table and an old bedside table, draped with fabric with flowers, and a winter garden, which consisted of a couple of pots, with some unpretentious plants. Grandma taught her granddaughter that green fertilizers and caring for them are the first duty of any princess. So on the tomb, behind the lack of cosmetics and perfumes, flower pots were adorned. Olga studied well at school, mainly because the girl was smart and diligent, and the local school in the working area could not claim the laurels of prestigious high school with high requirements and experienced teachers. So Olga studied, grew up, and did not even think that she would have to go through a hard time in life. Although this fate was understood by almost everyone who lived in the barracks, to either compromise with the most unpretentious housing conditions to the end of their days, or to earn money with all their might, tearing up the tiles to get out of this poverty. Olga's mother and grandmother were those who did not even try to earn money and leave unsuitable wooden walls. Grandma was born and raised in this barack. She immediately raised a daughter, and now, by the will of fate, raised here her only granddaughter. Alina's mother worked at a local fish market, and very often her appearance at home was marked by a specific fish smell that ate into her hair and skin and did not want to wash away, even when her mother took a warm iodine in 2 tanks and splashed into them, blocking the corner of the room with an improvised curtain. Grandma had a much more grounded profession. She was a librarian. However, the times when she worked in this profession have long been in the summer, together with factory libraries for children and adults. Therefore, she worked hard by trading eggs, dairy products, and something else that can be taken into practice today. Olga did not know about another life, and because she thought that many people lived like that, her friends who ran around the old barack with her lived in the same conditions, and even worse. Olga had no alcoholic father, and her mother didn't drink, like her neighbor Masha or the boys from the first floor of the neighboring barack. So the girl sincerely, as a child, thought herself happy. In school she was fine. In girlfriends there was no shortage. Her mother dressed her poorly, but she fed her modestly. So Olga spent her childhood, in her dreams of a beautiful far away, and in hopes that one day a prince on a white horse will come for her and take her from the barracks to the royal palace. After the end of the 9th grade, the girl did not go to the 10th grade because she hoped that an old grandmother and a rather healthy mother would be able to feed her for a few more years, was not. Olga did not think for a long time where to go and what specialty to acquire, because not far from the barack was just a college with suitable professions. Boys living in this area usually chose something like a car mechanic, a machine, or a tile maker, but the girls had a more modest choice: hairdresser or universal chef. Actually, on the last specialty, Olga stopped her choice. She loved to cook since childhood, but it was extremely difficult to do it with pleasure in the barracks. There were no conditions for this. Therefore, the girl with impatience waited for the start of training so that it could not be done in words, but in fact try to cook all those wonderful foreign dishes with her own hands, which she had only read in fashion magazines, but had no opportunity to smell them. However, the reality turned out to be completely different, and the young cook did not like it. Here they were taught to cook only the simplest, one might even say, grounded dishes, because there were no other products. Therefore, under the guidance of experienced masters, Olga learned to cook various first and second dishes, some of the pastries and desserts, a couple of units of conservation, and received her long-awaited diploma. Here she would start living in her own pleasure, start enjoying the opportunity to earn a penny and please herself and her mother and grandmother. But as if a stone was lying on her soul, she was pregnant, and with great difficulty hid it from others. Olga understood that the news that her granddaughter is expecting a child, while not having a separate home, no man around, no means to keep the baby, will finish off her relatives. They already pulled their last of their strength to drag her to the end of her life and give her the opportunity to earn to live a little better. Neither mom nor grandmother in a terrible dream saw the fact that Olga would bring in the pottle. But look at you, that's exactly how it happened. Olga met Misha's father on vacation. Or rather, he was on vacation, and Olga worked at the restaurant of the local seaside hotel. There she was practicing during training at the culinary college, and there this handsome boy put his eye on her. No one could say why it happened so. That Olga just couldn't resist Oleg. Apparently, warm summer nights, full moon in the dark sky, soft waves of snowy edge of the. Of course, having discovered that she was pregnant, the girl first fell into a real panic. She is only years old. Soon she will celebrate her perfection. Where is she going? A young and poor child. She just won't feed him, and there will be nowhere to live with a child. Olga went through the first, most difficult and stressful days and managed to get herself in the hands of something. If it so happened that she grew up without a father, who disappeared into space, barely knowing about the mother's pregnancy, then she just has to give a chance for normal life to her son or daughter. Olga came to the administrative office and somehow asked for their phone number of the resident in room. Of course, for this she had to lie about something. But is this the main thing? But now, the number was in her hands. Olga, with a heart-wrenching excitement, typed the cherished numbers and began to wait for the answer. When the young girl heard such a long-awaited hello in the phone, her legs shook with joy. "Hello, Olsek, hello, it's me," she boldly said to Olga's phone and grumbled when in response something incomprehensible sounded. "What is Olga?" The phone laughed as if something very funny was said now. "I know 5 things, so what are you?" Olga did not know how to explain to Oleg what Olga was exactly. Therefore, it became striking and already somehow uncertain to tell, trying to remind the man that they met at the boarding house, that she worked in the kitchen, and he was resting, that now she is pregnant, and needs his support. But the answer that followed literally knocked out the soil from under her feet. "Don't call me again. I had nothing with you. Those you hang out with, you sorted out. And I have nothing to hang on my puppies." Olga at first did not even understand what actually happened. How could it turn out that this man had some kind of relationship with her? Probably she just got the wrong number. And now Oleg is thinking about her somewhere, worried and bored. Olga tried to dial the same numbers again, but the phone was already turned off. The second and third times gave about the same results. Olga stood just looking at the phone in her hands and felt her tears boiling in her eyes. She then went through practice. But that June, which Olga spent on the sea, left a mark on her life forever. Having barely received a diploma, Olga admitted to her mother and grandmother that she would not be able to work in the near future, waiting for a child, and that her father simply refused her. She almost threw it away when she found out about her pregnancy. Although, to be honest, he left the boarding school without this and did not even leave his number. Therefore, even an interesting situation has nothing to do with it. Mom was in her decision categorically. Only abortions and nothing else. "Look, daughter, in what conditions we live. Look how we are dressed. Look what we eat. Bringing a child here is just a crime against him or her. So it's better to solve the problem now, until you can somehow get by with little blood. But do not bear the poverty that is already so high in their barracks." Grandma quietly cried in her chair while Mom spoke this fiery speech. She was sorry for her stupid little granddaughter, who did nothing wrong in general. But they did not raise their girl so that every man could see a potential enemy. So they got it. They are to blame for Olga's trust in the first passerby, exactly like her mother once. Grandma was sorry for the unborn baby who was carried by her granddaughter. Is it the child's fault that he is not expected on this earth? And do we really need to go to the abortion if the most important thing is the roof over Olga's head? Grandma made her decision to everyone. No abortion, let them give birth. Especially since now they give good care for the babies. Olga sincerely thanked the old woman, the only one who supported her. She was scared of the unknown and difficulties, but what is there to be afraid of now? After the fight, as you know, they don't wave their fists. Olga got a job at a local cafe. Not too fashionable, of course, but not the last 10. At the same time, the young girl was not officially hired to not be sent to a decree later, and provided a place only for the cook's assistant. It was, of course, not an easy time, because she had to be on her feet for a very long time, and also carry heavy lint with vegetables. But Olga, over time, adapted to do it so as not to hurt the child. She realized that every penny she earned would help her later when she would have a baby in her hands. And so, don't be stingy. People survive in much more difficult conditions. Olga carefully put all her earnings into a mug. She used to have a shoe box made of underpants, the only pair of shoes in her entire life, which she acquired in a new one on the local market, because there was some kind of sale. Now there are bills in this box. Olga brought home food that was not healthy, and thus she also saved on the food of her whole family. They had no food for the family. The barack, which since Olga's childhood was still crumbling and began to crumble, was soon taken in one of the rooms of a new resident. Olga called her son Michael, just because she liked the name. It was some kind of strong, special, powerful. Oleg never knew that he had become a father. By that time, the pink glasses in Olga's eyes were already completely broken. The glass inside, and everything became clear to the girl. Olga began to grow up a little bare, while trying to earn something at any opportunity. She worked at the Housekeeper, collecting pins at night or performing other unqualified types of work, and was a dishwasher and courier. She cleaned the graves in the cemetery and licked other people's dogs. In a word, she was enough for everything, because it was not easy to live on a single property. She tried not to burden her sons with her relatives, but sometimes she still asked her mother or grandmother to sit with Mishka while she ran off for another job. Periodically, she went to work with her son. Everything happened, but Olga never gave up and never let go. She realized that she was responsible for her son and had to try to give him everything that a child had from a family. When Misha turned months old, her grandmother passed away. She didn't feel sick or suffer from anything, just went to sleep, as it happens with very good people in life. After that, Olga became even more difficult because there was no one to leave the boy with. And no one will hear a good advice from anyone. Her mother didn't really like her grandson, but she tried not to spend too much time with him. Olga explained her decision as follows. I despised my child, and I don't want to nunchuck yours, sorry. I had to think about who and when to give birth to. Solve your problems yourself. The young girl, almost still a child herself, understood that in something her mother was right. It's her fault that Misha was born and lives in such cramped conditions. Besides, the child was constantly sick. Just around, one clung, then the second. If she had the opportunity to treat her son, and even just provide him with a living in a different climate, then everything would be much easier and better. But what to think now? Olga went crazy as she could. Mom, although she tried to help her child, remained her only counselor and soulmate. Olga's friends, who she spent childhood with, all have already grown up and have gone somewhere. The boys turned their noses from the poor-dressed girl with an old rattle truck. So only Olga remained to pour her mother's soul into those rare moments when they were both free from work. Two women, older and younger, almost did not quarrel. They have already learned to exist quite peacefully and calmly, not pretending to be someone else's time and effort, looking in one direction and not envying each other. Olga noted that she had never had such harmonious relations with her mother since her childhood. For several years in Olga's life, not a single man simply appeared. It was not until then that she had. Where does a man come from when he is tired, confused, with an ever-pigmented woman's eyes, who feels neither strength, nor ease, nor her own attraction to the opposite sex? Olga became like a robot, who did everything as it was laid out in his program, but she couldn't take a step away from this program. Walking with her son, feeding, healing, desperate attempts to make a little money. Everything was merged into a single circle, from which a young woman did not even try to get out. Olga did not use cosmetics at all. She could not spend money on a beautiful dress or even a high-quality shampoo. In honor of the holidays, she received not gifts in boxes with large bands, but medicines for her son, because she could not take them anywhere else. In short, Olga's life was not fun at all. And the last corner of stability in this world was her mother, who stretched her daughter's hand, seeing that she was exhausted to the limit. Miss Hanya grew up, and it became interesting and fun with him. Olga was impatiently waiting for the moment when her son would go to the local kindergarten, the one that she had visited almost 2 decades ago. From this moment on, she will finally be able to get a good job, and they will stop counting pennies, interrupting by random earnings and not knowing whether there will be an opportunity to end it tomorrow. Of course, Olga understood perfectly that Mishka would not go to kindergarten as it should, but then she unexpectedly agreed to ensure her mother. Seeing how the daughter is pulling into the thread and how hard it is, she decided that she would not suffer. If there is a chance to stay with the grandchildren at the hospital to give Olga the opportunity to earn money, it is difficult to describe how happy and grateful a young woman was. But the new turn of fate mercilessly broke all the plans that Olga had built for the day off yesterday and the charity that will be restored in their old room in the wooden barrack. Her mother, who never complained about anything and who did not feel anything special, died of a heart attack right at work. When Olga was called and informed about what had happened, she did not believe at first and then just lost consciousness. Fortunately, the neighbors were nearby. They took care of the fact that the young woman came to her senses. Now Olga has become times harder to live. Although she has now become the full-fledged owner of the room, can material acquisition replace a close relative? How Namble wandered Olga around the room from corner to corner while Miss Hanya slept in her bed. There was a cup of tea on the table with cold tea, and Olga just couldn't find a place in this change so suddenly. It was difficult for a young woman to accept the fact that work, a full-fledged work that would give the opportunity to feed himself and his son, so, apparently, will remain in dreams. In any case, until Misha stops being so strong and often sick, Olga no longer had tears. Before such stupidity of a young woman, when she can at any moment be without means to exist, you need to take yourself into your hands and make their son's life better. But how to do this without a life-saving shoulder? Olga's thoughts were confused, and she usually lay on her bed, in what she was, without undressing, and forgot for a while a heavy, painful sleep. But days went by, weeks and months went by, and now a joyful period of some kind of renewal came for Olga. Misha still went to the Yasli for the first time. Of course, the baby began to pick up various children's diseases, but at least sometimes Olga was already working. And then she was lucky. During breaks between endless illnesses, her boy will get a housework job. The local cafe was happy to let Olga work at home. And every day at exactly 1:00, she unloaded the car that arrived in the barrack. It was a real way out for the young but already endlessly broken mother lonely, who could not get a real job because of her eternally ill child. So it lasted almost a year. During this time, Olga managed to get used to it a little, get used to the work schedule, and even teach little Misha to help her in those cases when he was not in the garden. The boy was happily mixing the fillings. Sometimes he could soak the dishes in a large, emerald basin, and in general, he just entertained his mother with his cheerful voice. This year, Olga also changed for the better. For the first time since the birth of the child, she allowed herself to spend money on herself. Olga acquired a pair of clothes and sandals, cosmetics, and a beautiful big hairpin. Young woman stopped looking hungry and immediately showed her natural, unyielding, simple beauty. Olga could not boast of the lush forms, attractive doll faces, or the like, the stereotypical criteria of beauty, which were native to all modern beauties and made them similar and faceless, like celluloid dolls on the window of a toy store. But she was his own special and unique charm, which was manifested in his smile and voice, and also in his posture and head tilt. Olga began to notice that the man did not mind looking at her, and this discovery for some reason scared the girl. She did not want such male attention anymore. Of course, Olga did not try to stay forever in her. She dreamed that one day the very reliable and loyal man would appear next to her, with whom it would be easy to walk in life. And Misha needs to grow up in a full family, next to a man he can call a father. Olga, who grew up without a father, did not wish the same fate for her child. The young woman remembered perfectly how in childhood she often fantasized about the fact that her father simply does not know that she was born, that she is, and that he will definitely come for her, find her, and they will live together, happily and friendly, dad, mom, grandma, and she. But childhood dreams remain childhood dreams. Together with the burning desire to find support and support, Olga was also afraid of this. She just never had experience in interacting with a man, and therefore the girl could not guess what and how it would be. But still, she waited and hoped. When the driver changed the pies in the cafe that she ordered, Olga did not even immediately pay attention to this fact. And now another car started to come instead of him. Misha fell ill again, like mad, and there was simply no time to consider who came there for pies this time. Therefore, Olga, with a familiar gesture, put the driver under the nose, neatly covered with a white towel, received the same second one from him and the money, twisted into a tight roll, counted them, ran to the barack, to his room. She did not see how a man standing on the street with a pie under his nose looked at her under a white towel. Such meetings have become their daily. The driver, who was called Pavel in a strict time, brought an empty tray from yesterday, towels and money for the last batch of baking. Olga met Pavel at the door, took the tray, before that, giving him fresh pies, carefully wrapped from the wind, counted the coupons brought to them. On the second week of such meetings, Pavel asked to make him a cup of coffee. He said, "I can't sit behind the wheel. Can Olga treat him with a delicious drink?" But the young woman, to his surprise, just refused. "I don't drink coffee," she said with a slightly sad smile. "Sorry, son. I need to be treated. I'll go, okay?" And then she turned on the heels of old shoes and ran into the simple wooden doors. Pavel could only see her. There was something in this woman that he could not fully understand, but it just attracted him incredibly. Pavel was never married, and he never had a permanent girlfriend either. Always before that, a young man was proud of the fact that he lived to his th year, and never let a single representative of the weak sex get out on his head. All of them were, from his point of view, too predictable for him, and therefore flat, fresh, and uninteresting. All of them were exactly like their own sisters, so template that from this similarity literally took off the in Olga, this young woman was different. He felt it right away, but alas, for the first time in his life he met a turn-off. That's how simple it is when nothing was foreseen. No, they won't do that. By the next visit to the barack, Pavel prepared as follows. He took a pack of good coffee and everything you need to brew and serve it, a jar of raspberry jam and lemon, some kind of chocolate bar from the nearest supermarket, and also, he grabbed a small plastic machine. If she really has a little son, let the little boy rejoice. However, Pavel didn't know if Olga would let him go further down the threshold, but it was an attempt, not a torture. We have to start with something to melt the heart of the Snow Queen. Surprisingly, everything went just fine for the man. Olga didn't even resist when he showed her a package with a victorious look, filled with all sorts of differences for her and for her child. She just silently took him to the kitchen and left him alone with cups and coffee. Such a reception and such terrible living conditions Pavel did not expect. He saw a lot of dormitories in his age, but this barack, according to the man, could easily be filmed without any changes as a decoration for horror films. The kitchen seemed to him just a focus of evil on the ground, but still it was pretty clean, although very poor. Just a calling poor. Olga appeared a couple of minutes later after the coffee was ready and the scent of the overseas drink swam around the floor, inviting to itself all living and capable of moving the population of the barack. Pavel never thought that it could be considered so unceremoniously, but here came Olga and took him to his room. Pavel drank the burning drink and considered the poor, if not to say the miserable situation. But still, it felt like the old furniture sold and her mistress were not the same. Pavel saw that Olga lived not because she just didn't care about anything and didn't want to do anything for herself and her child, but only because she had other priorities. The room was very clean, and this immediately fell into the eyes of the man. No dust, no toys. Windows shone with transparency and purity, and there was not a single dust in the air. It was clear that Olga was the perfect host. And also Pavel was able to make sure that his new acquaintance was a great mother. The boy who sat on the bed, dressed in a warm jacket, was transparent, pale, but at the same time politely greeted him and with great interest got tired of the car that Pavel gave him. This is how Olga started communicating with this man, with whom she was working. At first, she did not make any long-term plans, because she was not ready for it. The young mother, like a hare in a step, was looping between attempts to cure her son and his rare trips to the kindergarten. She had enough problems besides Pavel, and did not want to get into the head of interpersonal issues. But the man did not let Olga just refuse him again, and insisted that their communication become regular and mutual. Pavel himself could not explain what he wanted from this woman with the eyes of an adult man and a child's soul. He is not the one who is now drawn to his former lifestyle, but has significantly revised his life priorities. Pavlik got used to all the women meeting him being literally put down in a row when he makes them understand that he agrees to communicate with them. But with Olga, it was not like that. She did not behave like he was the biggest prize in her life. She did not try to keep him at any cost. She did not get pregnant or decorate herself. She was just alive, real, sincere, and cheerful. And Mishka, who Pavel already knew well, grew up the same as his mother. Pavel got used to the fact that after work he comes here, to this barack, to the room he already knew. They rarely went out together, and they didn't have such a need. But the time that the man spent here, he undoubtedly liked. Olga was afraid to admit to herself that she fell in love. She promised herself that she would never fall in love, because it would never lead to anything good. But where did all her past beliefs go? The tall, strong, and courageous Pavel covered up all her life experience, and she decided that nothing bad would happen in her life. In fact, they love each other, they meet each other, and he made a joke of it. Of course, I would like to hear something concrete from him about plans for a family and common children, but maybe he just hasn't grown up yet, hasn't reached the point of voicing such opportunities to her. In the end, they now understand each other well, which means that it is necessary to try to preserve this magical atmosphere between them. Grandma taught that there is nothing better than to rejoice in life, even a little. So why is she not happy, but waiting for something more? At work, Olga's business was also going slowly. She dreamed of the moment when they would marry Pavel and live together, so that she could give Mishka to a good kindergarten and look for a job for a diploma in a prestigious company. She wanted to start working not only for herself, but also for her name, to get not only small money from such work, but also some kind of pleasure. Olga was pure in everything that concerned the work. Let her have no hands in personal life and no even normal roof over her head, but in the kitchen she can manage. Any owner of the establishment, letting her into the kitchen, could be convinced of this. And the fantasies of a young woman aroused memories that professional cooks for one single output have so much. How much with her pies? So you need to pull yourself together. You need to strive. You need to break out of here from the old barack. And Paul will immediately be more pleased to be with her, if his woman will have good earnings and prestigious work. This is what Olga thought and waited for the dream proposal from the heart. But Pavel did not hurry to make this proposal. He is a jealous groom for any woman. He has his own apartment, a good foreign market, work, and the opportunity to live as he wants. So why spoil your life and tie yourself up? Even when Olga told him that a child was waiting for him, Pavel did not change his mind. On the contrary, the man got sad got serious and told her that he needs to think what they will do now. The next day, not Pavel came to get the pies, but some other driver. Olga immediately suspected the naughty one, quickly put the newcomer's hand under the nose with a bake and began to call Pavel. But he just didn't answer the phone. So Olga realized that the man had made his choice. He didn't need her or her child. He just wanted to have a nice time and got exactly that from her. It was left to solve the question of what to do with the child who already lived in her. Olga did not want to step on the same rakes that 4 years ago, because she did not call Pavel and humiliate herself in front of him, asking to recognize her baby. No, she will stay above that. She will do without his feed. And then say, where does she know? Will there be those feed? Apparently, Pavel is determined to not have anything in common with his own child. Well, okay, we'll survive. At first, it was literally scary to look at a young woman. She just lost faith in people. She didn't even want to think that she would soon have 2 children and not a single hand to lean on. When she was waiting for Mishka, she always had a grandmother and a mother next to her. And that's why Olga knew that she could do it, that she could do it, that she was strong. And now, what did she do? She won't be able to pull out 2 kids at once. Maybe it's too late to solve this question, so that there won't be a painful pain for poverty, for cold and illness, for the fact that she can't give anything to her children. In fact, why bring up a child who is essentially unnecessary to anyone, and which will break the pretty weak balance without it, just to know that she did not act differently? Olga firmly decided that in the morning she would sign up for an abortion for a local female consultation, just because there was no other way out of her situation and could not be, and they somehow need to live with Mishka? So she came to her rescue to perform this easy operation. Never return to the helplessness of a newborn mother to whom she cannot give anything. But it was not here. In the morning, Misha's temperature rose so high that Olga did not take the risk and called for ambulance. The child literally burned, and she would not be able to cope with his treatment at home. The ambulance took them and Misha to the hospital, where they were wandering around the departments for almost 3 weeks. The boy was suspected of hemorrhage, pneumonia, angina. The treatment that Olga spent all the money she had in the stash took a lot of time and took a lot of effort. The young woman lived only with one burning desire, for all this to finally end, and they and Mishka were at home. There, where, as you know, the walls are being treated, so that her son would stop taking injections and drip drains, and so that she could finally get some sleep and rest as she should. After all these troubles and worries, Olga just missed the time when she could still fix the complete problem. And immediately upon returning from the hospital, it became more clear to the second baby-to-be. It cannot be said that the young woman was so much pleased with the fact that she was able to get rid of the pain of the illness. The second baby was not the only one who was able to get rid of the pain of the illness. The second baby was not the only one who was able to get rid. That she no longer has this option. But she still experienced a certain relief. If that's what you need, let it be so. After all, she always wanted to give birth to a girl. Yes, it would be good if the second baby turned out to be a girl, a daughter. She will call her either in honor of her mother, Maria, or in honor of her grandmother, Elena. And she will have a visible reminder of that there were people on earth who she was indifferent to. The anxiety and concern for the future did not leave Olga for a moment, since she decided that the child was leaving because she had almost no time to react. She thought with pain about what would happen to her son if something went wrong and understood that he does not need anyone but her. So she should do this, so that everything would go well for her. In due time, a daughter appeared, who was called Maria. Now she had Misha and Masha, 2 of her favorite children, for which she would go to the world. Of course, Olga's life became much more difficult. Maria was more restless than her brother in childhood, and also often hurt, getting infected by Misha. In one room of the barack, children could not be divided in any way so that they did not infect each other. Yes, And with money, the problem was considerable, because Olga did not always have time to bake a full tray of pies as before. But the children made Mom happy even just by the fact of their existence. She understood that you need to find your strength. Everything will be fine with them. Time flew in an unnoticeable way, at a crazy pace. It would seem that only yesterday Masha was born, and now she is already trying to get up on her tiny, tightly bent legs, and her older brother supports her so that she does not fall. And here she goes. And here she ran. Misha got sick again for the second time in a month, and again with such a terrible cough. Olga snuck out of her memories of the past and began to think about where to take money for a new bottle of syrup from the temperature. No one has to owe. She almost doesn't work now because the children are sick in a circle. Just doesn't have time. She hasn't paid off her debts yet, and therefore no one will owe her anything. Trying to find the remains of the old one is probably the best way out, because there is nowhere to find the new one. She will give Misha the syrup only before going to sleep. Maybe he will have enough for another day. But what will happen next? She will have to solve this question anyway. She will come up with something. It's not her first time. If only she could find a job, a real one, so that they pay in a humane way. She would try, would work, as if it was her last day, because she pressed Olga so hard that she couldn't even breathe. You can't feed 2 children and an adult man with pies, but you still need to treat Misha. Olga lay down on an old bed and stretched her legs, seeing gray, clouded sheets. Through the sleep, listening to the uneven, rough breath of the sun behind the curtain from the blanket. In the morning, Olga, having checked how all the supplies of medicines are followed, realized that the moment of no return had come. She has nothing to treat her son in the morning, which means that some extraordinary measures should be taken urgently. The young woman decided that her situation was not good enough and sat down to view the websites of free ads. She used to avoid them carefully because there were not enough good vacancies there. But the chances of getting what she feared as fire were very high. But now she should try to be happy either here or nowhere, because Misha needs to be treated. She doesn't want to see her son literally burning from the heat in her own eyes. Having called 24 different ads, the young woman was ready to give up and give up. She did not find anything similar to what she needed. Absolutely nothing. Those kinds of work that she could do were not achieved because of 2 children, and where she was ready to take her with any number of children, she did not want to work. Only 2 vacancies selected were listed on the list. One of them provided work at a gas station at night, and therefore now Olga did not fit well. And the second promised tempting conditions with the presence of experience in taking care of the house and the household. They were looking for an economy there, and even, perhaps, with a living. Of course, she would have pulled out a real jackpot if she got on such a vacation. She would have tried to work with all her might. They wouldn't take much space, much effort, and in good conditions, Misha, look, would stop being so strong and often sick. In a word, this is her chance. It is quite likely that she is the only one, and she should use him to the fullest. Trying to avoid but no one hurried to pick up the phone, and the young woman with despair thought that she was late, or that the vacancies were not active at all. But then a click was given, the connection was established, and the voice of an elderly person clearly spoke into the phone. "Hello, I'm listening to you." Olga was so worried that she didn't even know where to start this important, just fateful conversation. But not to tell a person who is not a part of her life about the fact that she desperately needs money to live on her own and to support her children. That her children are constantly ill, including due to poor living conditions, and that for a bowl of hot soup and decent sleep conditions, she is ready to work from dawn to dawn. Instead, the young woman tried to calm down and began to tell about herself. She said that she was looking for a job, that she had 2 children, but was ready to work very responsibly and conscientiously. She also forgot to mention that she has a degree in the cuisine department, as well as a good degree in this industry. She especially emphasized that she was not afraid of any work, not lazy and ready to fulfill all the conditions that the employer would have. She did not hide that she was not interested in taking vacancies, and that's why she's ready to start now, if there's such an opportunity. You have 2 small children, but you're looking for a job with a living? That's somewhat out of the ordinary. You can't find one? The voice at the end of the wire seemed to be a little fun. Olga didn't know what to say to the stranger. Is he mocking her, or what? She has clearly described her prospects in the case that she does not have a job, or rather, lack of all kinds of prospects. And so she is ready to take everything that will come her way. Her children will not burden her with a person she will take care of. Olga is ready to put all her efforts into this. I understand that this is somewhat unexpected, but believe me, I have been looking for a job for a long time. Any job. Olga stopped for a minute and then continued, and why not try to be happy in the business of taking care of the sick or running the household? I don't have such a big choice to go on vacations, but if I don't suit you, then I'm sorry. The phone rang something incomprehensible, and at the moment when Olga was ready to press the no, don't think about it. I haven't come out of my mind yet, and I understand that you talk to me extremely politely, but the very setting of the question, yes, I haven't seen anything like that in a long time, so that the companions to the elderly man were hired immediately with 2 children, and no other way. Olga watched as the awake Masha rose to her feet in her bed and already wanted to end this pointless conversation. Well, this is just a refusal. Another refusal. Another damn. Which is a coma. Probably someone just needs this vacancy much more than she does. She is not alone in such a desperate situation. There are among those who have nowhere to go and have nothing to live, and those who are not pregnant with 2 children. So everything is normal. You just need to politely say goodbye to her old interlocutor. He didn't do anything bad to her. So you call the address, you come? She was pulled out of her mind by the voice of an old man. Olga stood on the wall in front of herself and refused to believe in this incredible luck. And then she suddenly smiled and said to the phone, warm and joyful, of course, call me. When will you be more comfortable? Olga herself did not know whether to sing, dance, or cry. Like salty drops flowed on her cheeks. It would seem, well, why be angry? Grandma used to say that, not being happy with the dampness here. But she was angry and crying for an incomprehensible reason, as if all the bitterness, all the pain, all the hopelessness were leaving the soul along these paths laid on the cheeks with salty tears. Will she and her children really be so lucky? Apparently, this man can pay her a decent salary. Of course, she will work hard to earn this salary. It is not even discussed. But she will be able to buy Mishka the best medicine, the ones that the doctor prescribes, not the ones she has enough money for. And Masha will buy the first dress she wears in her life. She has still been wearing the clothes that she inherited from her older brother, so she will make fun of her daughter with a beautiful dress. At the appointed time, Olga was already standing with the children at the address that the man on the phone dictated to her, and doubts were becoming more and more overpowering the young woman. It was a small story house, a manor house, which she got used to. It was a mansion located in a private sector of the city. Beautiful evergreen trees and a lush lawn. They clearly didn't count every penny here. Why would such a rich person give an ad on free boards? If you even assume that he needs so much in his seat, any city agency will be incredibly happy to pick up what is needed. Money for the service of professionals is clearly not in his hands. Maybe her press interlocutor just joked about her? He called another, completely different address and now enjoys knowing that he sent a woman with her 2 children there, where she will soon be thrown out with a scandal. A funny joke. Nothing to say. Olga had a hard time breathing. Apparently, she will have to leave. She carried the bread, and she was so happy all these several hours. For this pleasure, she spent almost all the rest of the syrup, and now the temperature will be unbearable for the child for the night. It's a pity that there are such ruthless jokers in the world. But there is nothing to do. The school has been dragged where they do not wait for you, and you have to leave on your own, and not when the owners, who will not call the police about you with sleep or spirit. Olga has already turned around to leave. She grabbed Masha's hand, took Misha's hand, and suddenly stopped. What will she lose if she just calls the house phone located right there, under the curtain, and asks her recent interlocutor? If she is sent away, well, then she will be sent. What if not? This man talked to her so confidently that she did not suspect his lies. Maybe she was still lucky today. Olga lowered her daughter onto the asphalt again, and with decisive movements stretched her hand to the home phone button. On the phone, they answered almost immediately. "Olga, come in. I was waiting for you. It's good that you came, although I doubted that you would decide." The acquaintance with the owner of the mansion went easily and naturally. He seemed to the young woman somewhat sad, but still a pretty strong person, and the range of responsibilities of a young woman, so he outlined it simply, albeit quite broadly. "I don't really like big company and crowds around me, so a bunch of housekeepers, maids, cooks, and gardeners irritate me. I think I deserve the opportunity to live in comfort, so you will run the house completely. You are responsible for purchasing groceries and other things, cooking, cleaning, and washing. There are mechanical assistants for everything. Maxim is responsible for the siege, and he will not bother you. That's probably all. Well, will you take up this job?" Olga was ready to kiss an elderly person who so easily makes her the best offer in her life. Is she ready? Yes, she will start now. Just give her the opportunity to start. You can arrange your children in the side rooms, the same place where you will live. I won't hide it. I would prefer a maid without such people accompanying her, but something has caught my attention in your story, and I can't even understand what it is. I spend a lot of time in my office. I will be grateful if children don't go there, and I think they won't bother me in the rest. The house is very big, as you can see, so everything is formed at an all-encompassing level." Olga agreed with Kavala, already thinking about where to start arranging her house, and decided that the best option would be to prepare a festive dinner. When Sergei Viktorovich, who was the owner of the mansion, went to the office, Olga took the baby and went to the kitchen. It was necessary to find out what was in the house from food supplies. But what kind of work is this? It's just a pleasure. Every morning, the young woman, barely waking up, started preparing breakfast. Then the children woke up, and together with them she went shopping. Fortunately, the supermarket was nearby. Next, cleaning in the rooms followed while Misha entertained little Masha and preparing lunch from 3 dishes. Fortunately, Olga immediately mastered the full-scale kitchen combine, dishwasher, and other non-silly equipment. Sergei Viktorovich was not too demanding a master, and as far as she managed to notice, almost always stayed in a calm and contemplative mood. He had no family, no relatives, and even with the presence of friends, he could not boast. The man just lived. Fortunately, the previous several decades of labor. The man did not object to the presence of children in the house, especially since Olga tried to do everything so that they would be as rarely seen by the owner as possible. He never made any comments about this, but suddenly it seemed to the young woman that the employer just felt sorry for her, the single mother, and therefore stepped over to give her this place an opportunity to earn. When he stopped spending all his time in a room covered with mold walls, Olga acquired exactly those medicines that the doctor ordered, and the condition of the child began to improve rapidly. After a day's sleep, Olga usually put the dough for baking, and they went for a walk in the yard with the children. They didn't have much time, and they used it well. One of those days Olga accidentally looked out the window, which was not covered by heavy porches. There, behind the window, in a leather chair, was sitting Sergei Viktorovich. He was holding some book in his hands. However, looking closer, the girl realized that it was not a book, but a photo album. The elderly man looked at his pages so carefully that Olga's heart was crumbling. How much longing was in this look? The young woman felt as if she saw something intimate, not intended for her eyes. She immediately took her eyes off and began to gather children in the house. I wonder what the owner of such a chic mansion was sad about there? What could she be sad about and grieve about in his place? He has everything. There is only one thing: family. The next day, when I was cleaning the office, a young woman was unwillingly looking at the same photo album. Apparently, he used to stand on the shelf among other publications, and now he was carelessly thrown to the edge of the table, as if the owner was still hoping to return to the viewing. Olga came closer and carefully opened the cover. A photo of a boy was seen on it, in which, with some imagination, it was possible to recognize Sergei Viktorovich. The woman turned the page. There was the same child, but already with parents. Black and white, heavy photos, someone's memory of the years that will never come back. Olga was so involved that she began to leave photos one after another. From the page, people looked at her, who apparently no longer exist in the world. And how exciting was this journey to the past? Olga literally could not take her eyes off the worn old photos. Suddenly, the photo on the next turn attracted her attention more than others. It was already colorful. There, next to the young and cute Sergei Viktorovich, stood in the middle of the turn, her mother? Is this really her mother? Young, cheerful, mischievous, thin, and all kind of unearthly. At first she didn't believe that it was possible. But in fact, how could it be? Where did her mother come from with this man? It was hard to determine where and when the photo was taken, and there was no signature. But even if it is allowed that this woman looks like her mother, it is just a portrait similarity. Olga looked at the woman in the photo, who was wearing a strong male shoulder. The man was obviously much older than the woman, but the serious age difference did not prevent them from being so happy. What a mother who shines! Even through old paper she was whistling some kind of unwavering happiness and pleasure. This is her. There can be no doubt about it. Olga did not notice how Sergei Viktorovich entered the office. Half a minute he looked at the housekeeper, and then quietly approached her and softly explained. This girl, Maria, was her name. We met somehow accidentally in the construction squad. There were such people at that time. My strongest and only love. Olga hardly managed to transfer her spirit. Maria, so this is still her mother. But she never told her that she had such a... Although then Sergei Viktorovich was certainly not as he is now, and this story could well be the most outspoken. And what happened to her? Afterwards? As if she heard her voice from the side. And she even felt uncomfortable. Olga felt as if she was looking into the locked well and seeing something she shouldn't see. And nothing, Sergei Viktorovich replied sadly. She left. We had a fight before leaving, though. It was a matter of course. What do you mean, a fight? Olga asked, and she didn't recognize her voice. Does she have the right to enter this person's personal life? Is it worth asking him such questions? But Sergei Viktorovich seemed to be waiting for this. Not that he wanted to discuss this specifically with Olga, but just wanted to remove the burden from his soul, the heaviness that had been there for so many years. He needed a simple, understanding interlocutor, and that's why he sat in a chair and began to speak slowly, with sense. And Olga listened to him, and the eyes of the girl became bigger and bigger. Then, when it was necessary to move away, well, you understand, Olenka, that we did not work there forever. We argued with the minstrel, and she said that I would later regret that I offended her today, that she could give me what every normal person needs, but now she will find someone else as an addressee. Did you really hurt her? This question burst out of Alina's lips by accident. She didn't even understand how it happened. No, followed by a calm and even answer. I didn't do anything terrible then. You just know how it happens. Youth, hotness, rush, pride, tired eyes. Maria was very temperamental, so she took some kind of a trifle for mortal insult. Olga was so tempted to tell the man that his character, Maria's, is better known to her than anyone else in this world. But she kept silent. Why? She couldn't say for sure. It's just that Sergei Viktorovich revealed to her the mystery that has been a mystery for more than a decade. And she so shamelessly listened to her, and did not even find the strength to admit that she knew the woman with the photo. Meanwhile, the man with sadness said further, I often now return to the past with thoughts. If I were then as experienced as now, then I would definitely keep Masha. I would not let her go so easily, disappear, not leave me no address, not even a slightest clue where to look for her. I feel that I would be happy with her next to me. We would have children, grandchildren, and so what? Old song. No one to bow their heads to. I would like to know how my life has turned out for Masha. An elderly and very unhappy man was sitting in front of a young woman in a chair. She clearly saw this. Sergei Viktorovich did not try to decorate his experiences. He really suffered. She was sorry for him, and it hurt. That's how the life of this man went, and he doesn't even know that he had a daughter. Olga had no doubts now. Her father was not under the influence and did not abandon her. Mom just, as always, accepted everything close to her heart and then believed in her imagination. Very carefully, as if afraid to scare the wild, she asked the owner of the mansion, even afraid of the sound of her own voice. And if you were told that there are people who know this woman, well, that is, you did not try to find her? Sergei Viktorovich smiled sadly, stroking his knee with his palm. Tried, and more than once, but not then, but already now, when he became who he became. Inevitably. Too many years have passed since then, alas, and I have almost no information left. I wish I knew. Maybe Masha needs help, but I don't know. Olga sighed deeply, and then she spoke out of fear, as if afraid to rethink and keep silent. She doesn't need help. Maria is dead, but she remembered about you. I know for sure. Sergei Viktorovich was furious at her and demanded an explanation of what she meant. Maybe you have such information? This is my mother. The girl spoke quietly, and there was a loud silence in the office. And then thousands of questions were immediately voiced, and thousands of answers were given to them. Gradually, Sergei Viktorovich made the same conclusions as Olga and came to the same decision as she did. Comparing the date of the girl's birth and the time he spent in the construction unit, the man realized that he had every reason to consider Olga his daughter. Then they talked for a long time about what Maria was like. Olga told him everything without any excuses, except one thing. She did not find the courage to admit to him that her mother was very rude to him, and just said that she heard almost nothing about it. As they say, about the dead, either good or nothing. The next day, they came to the cemetery with Sergei Viktorovich, whom she could not call a father, where an elderly man was able to pay his last respects to a woman who had left his life, who he remembered for so many years. Olga's eyes were filled with tears when she watched the bouquet of bright scarlet roses that he put on the grave. Sergei Viktorovich insisted that the DNA test be conducted. Olga almost had no doubt that he would be positive. So it happened. The probability of fatherhood was set at %, and now she got the opportunity to know who her father was. After that, Olga's life began to improve rapidly. It was not surprising, because for so many years an elderly man suffered from loneliness, and now he had the opportunity to give himself to his daughter and 2 grandchildren. Olga could not worry about the fact that she had nothing to feed the children with or to cure them tomorrow, and the roof over the head of all 3 appeared more than reliable. Sergei Viktorovich insisted that Olga go to school, at least for a while, because it was the diploma. Education is the key that can open many doors at one time. So, Olga got into the study of the local university at the Faculty of Economics. While she is eating granite, her children are in a private kindergarten, and then they spend time with their grandfather, who seems to have dropped the age of. Sergei Viktorovich did not doubt that his daughter could arrange her destiny. She is not separated by beauty, or mind, or empathy. So even the presence of two children, in the opinion of a man, will never prevent the girl from finding her second half. And he will try to make Olga have all the opportunities for this. Olga never returned to that room in the old barrack, from which she went to work to the rich and eccentric man who turned out to be her father. She had no doubt that this story of a wonderful reunion of the family would be told to her grandchildren and great-grandchildren, because there are ignitions that are more evil than the Hollywood plots. As for Sergei Viktorovich himself, he was never as happy as he was in those days. At first it seemed to him that all this was no more than a magical dream, and that he would soon wake up, and there was no one around. But days went by, weeks went by, and his daughter and grandchildren were nowhere to be found. He spent most of his life to earn all his current wealth, but at the same time he was crying for the past that had left him. He would never return the past days to Masha. But fate gave him a wonderful opportunity to be needed at the age of old by the one he always dreamed of. But is it not a real happiness for a person?